Welcome to the Repurposing Podcast, the program that brings you closer to the latest innovations, research and developments happening in drug repurposing across the globe. I'm your host, Alexander Rodriguez, and in this episode we welcome Johannes Kersting. Having grown up in a small village in Bavaria, in Germany, Johannes studied his bachelor's degree and master's in Bioinformatics at the Technical University of Munich, where he's also now pursuing his PhD. He's part of data science in systems biology, also known as DaiSyBio, a research group led by Professor Markus List, where Johannes is developing in silico drug repurposing workflows as part of his involvement in the European-funded project REPO4EU. In this episode, Johannes talks about his passion for problem solving, his journey into the academic world as a scientist, and he shares his thoughts on drug repurposing as a research field. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hello, Johannes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Alex. Thank you for the nice introduction and also for inviting me to the podcast. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So I think it's quite interesting, Johannes, that you've based most of your academic career so far around the fascinating world of bioinformatics. And I'm curious to know what attracted you about this particular scientific field.
Specifically for bioinformatics, it was because it combines so many different disciplines. I knew from school that I was interested in science. That was something I was also good at, and I liked solving problems and discovering new things. But I wasn't really sure which direction exactly I should go. Bioinformatics has the advantage that it combines, of course, biology. You also need chemistry, math, of course, informatics, in some occasion even physics. So it, really combines a lot of all the natural sciences. And I think having this mixture was my main motivation to go that way.
This is what I think makes it such an interesting discipline because, like you said, it combines so many different things into one. What is the aspect that you enjoy the most about being a bioinformatician?
Well, even in school, I always liked programming, so that's definitely why the computer science aspect was part of it. And what was also intriguing about bioinformatics is that it was, or in a way still is, such a young research field. Which basically just became necessary when biology started to produce more and more data, which was just no longer comprehensible by humans alone. And because it was and still is such a new field, such a young field, there's still a lot of movement also involved and a lot of development. And I thought that this is also a really nice opportunity to really contribute to a field because it's still actively evolving.
And as an evolving field, as you just said, I assume there's a lot of scope for new research and new ideas, but what made you decide going down the academic route and doing a PhD instead of, for example, looking for opportunities to apply your knowledge in the industry?
I think one of my main motivations for this was personal development, because I thought that in academia I will be constantly challenged with new tasks and I will constantly have the opportunity to learn new things, which actually was true if I think about the last 2 years. It's actually tremendous how much stuff you learn in that rather short period of time. But that progress in learning new things and discovering new things, I think that was my main motivation for staying in academia for a PhD.
It definitely sounds really exciting. In regards to your PhD specifically, what is the big question you're trying to answer? What is the main focus of your research? Tell me a bit more about the themes you're exploring.
The overall topic of my PhD deals with understanding gene regulation, specifically in complex diseases, because they can be impacted or driven quite a lot through changes in gene regulatory patterns. The goal in a way is to get a better understanding of diseases and the mechanisms and how they work, because ultimately this will also lead to better treatment and repurposing options.
So, Johannes, I know you're working with the DaiSyBio research group led by Professor Markus List, and a big bulk of your work is what you're doing for the REPO4EU project at the moment. Can you tell me a bit more about what you're doing, what your main tasks are, and what are you focusing on?
My main role in this project is the knowledge base for REPO4EU. Because drug repurposing requires a lot of different data, for example, on drug targets, disease associations, side effect of drugs, drug-drug interactions, and the list is literally endless. And they're our main task of our group, also of the Technical University of Munich, to provide and maintain this data for the partners in the project, and later, of course, also for the platform, which is the ultimate goal of the REPO4EU project.
You say you work with data, which obviously makes a lot of sense as a bioinformatician. But what does your day-to-day look like? Because maybe some of our listeners don't know a lot about the role of a bioinformatician, especially in the context of a research and innovation project like REPO4EU. So if we were to zoom in on what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, what does that look like?
Yeah, so what I do actually involves a lot of hands-on programming. For example, for this knowledge base, all these different sources of information are usually, they are available, but they are scattered across a lot of different databases and sources. And for REPO4EU, we're extending on an existing resource called NetRex. And there the goal was really to combine all these different types of information into one shared place and database. And that's not easy to integrate all those different components, but the goal there, which we also achieved in a way already, is to have this information in one place and in one knowledge graph, where it is easily accessible for everyone who wants to work in this data in a centralized and also unified way. And yeah, my daily tasks there involve testing a lot of code, writing a lot of code, trying to integrate new sources, checking if the source is up to date, and things like that.
I can imagine it must be so great and very rewarding to have this hands-on approach to your research, knowing that you're helping to develop this super helpful tool for other researchers and clinicians and anyone who's interested in drug repurposing. Obviously, one of the main ethos of a project like Repurposing is to combine all these different skill sets and different specialisms to try and advance a huge area like drug repurposing. And I wanted to ask you, how does this benefit not only your research, but yourself as well, being able to work collaboratively with colleagues who might be clinicians and mathematicians and have different roles to what you do? Is there a benefit, do you think?
Oh, I think the collaborative aspects between different fields is really one of the most important things in this project. Because drug repurposing in general, it spans so many different fields of expertise, and you probably need more expertise for such a project than any human being could ever acquire in their lifetime. So it's really a necessity to collaborate with experts from different fields. Yeah, it involves, of course, pharmacology, biology, and then when you do mechanistic drug repurposing, you need so much data that you also need bioinformaticians to somehow comprehend all that. Then you have the legal and patenting aspects. And for the platform, which we're trying to build in REPO4EU, which will be a digital infrastructure, you of course also need software developers. We as bioinformaticians, we can do some coding as well, but still for implementing such an infrastructure project, again, a different skill set is required. And I could name up a lot of examples where this collaboration has been very helpful and even necessary.
Would you like to share an example with us?
I think is rather a small example, but a fun one in a way, is that a student of ours was developing a web tool for drug repurposing, which involved the visualization of different genes and their interactions. And those genes, they have different ID spaces or names. And some of those names, they're more designed to be human readable and they are used in the literature. And some of those are more designed for computers, so they are less ambiguous and more exact. Because of this, they're basically just numbers, so not very nice to work with for humans. But for us bioinformaticians, and in the end I can only speak about myself, we don't recognize that many gene names. So for us, it doesn't really matter that much which identifier we use, because most of them will just be a string or a number anyway. So when we work with those identifiers, we usually pick the ones which are readable for the computer. Yeah, because we are bioinformaticians. And that's also what we did in this web tool. But then we got feedback from biologists in the project, and they of course mentioned, hey, you have to use some gene names which we actually understand, which we can comprehend. Yeah, and that's just a nice example where even though we have a biology background, we are of course no biologist, and they have a different skill set and have different requirements. Yeah, that was, I think, a very nice example where this collaboration and feedback is just necessary.
That's quite funny, actually. And it also comes to show that different disciplines would have different requirements, different needs, and also different languages. So that's really interesting. I also wanted to ask you about your previous knowledge of drug repurposing before entering Repurposing, because obviously you studied bioinformatics and you said you had an interest in developing this field in different ways, but did you know a lot about drug repurposing before entering Repurposing, and what do you think has kept you in this area of knowledge while doing your PhD?
Drug repurposing, of course, is a very relevant and important research area. I really did not know a lot about this field before I started out my PhD, so it was a lot of new stuff and things to learn. In the future, I think drug repurposing won't be just something nice to have, but it will be a necessity, most likely. And that's, of course, something very motivating if you know that your research area is important. The other aspect also ties into my motivation for bioinformatics in general, and that is the dynamics in this young research area and field. Because also for drug repurposing in particular, we don't know the best way how to do this yet. There are many different approaches, and while this can be intimidating that there are so many options and uncertainties, this also opens up a lot of space for creativity and for your own ideas.
So, Johannes, as a young researcher and also working in such an evolving field, both in bioinformatics and also in drug repurposing, I assume you must have encountered some difficulties and some challenges along your journey. What keeps you going? Where does your drive and your motivation to do what you do come from?
My main drive in general is just finding solutions to problems. That's just something I enjoy doing. Actually, I think the research area wouldn't even be that important for this to work. If there's a problem, that's that's enough. And yet, generally, for more specific motivation, I would say I take a lot out of the discussions within our group, for example, also with my supervisor and my colleagues, and of course also the colleagues from Repurposing. Yeah, having discussions with people who work in the same field can actually provide feedback to ideas. And I think those discussions make a lot of the abstract concepts you're thinking of all the time a lot more real. Yeah, I would say major source of inspiration and motivation for me.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. I think seeking support in your peers, people who work in the same field as you, is super important. As you said, not only to exchange ideas, but also to, I guess, seek refuge in people who are going through the same as what you're going through. So yeah, I would absolutely agree. And on a similar note, and this is the last question of our interview today, drawing from all your experiences and your journey so far, what would be your main advice to a young researcher starting, or someone who's maybe deciding whether or not to pursue a career in the science? What would be your main advice?
That's a great question. Well, I'm not sure if I'm already qualified to give such a wise advice, because I feel like I'm just starting out myself. Like 2 years in the contrast of how much stuff there is to learn is really a very short period of time. So I would still consider myself just starting out. If I would have to give advice to someone really just starting out in the field, I would say to not let yourself get intimidated by all the stuff you don't know. Because when a lot of people start the PhD, including myself, I think they realize that they don't know as much as they thought they would. And that can be intimidating because there's so much you just don't know. That's normal, that's okay. And that it will get better with time, and that you can actually take this as an opportunity to learn something new every day. Of course, you will never know everything, And that's also how it should be. And then this will get better with time.
I think that's a fantastic piece of advice, and it's one that can be applied to any field. So I think I'm going to take it for myself as well. So I think this is a great way to end our conversation today, Johannes. Thank you so much for your time and for opening a window into what a bioinformatician is and what you're working on, your role in the Repurposing project, and yeah, I look forward to hearing more about your research as the project goes along, and all the best.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me.
For more information about Repo4EU and the mission behind the project, please visit Repo4EU and make sure to follow the project on all the social media. We're on X, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and YouTube. If you simply type Repo4EU, you'll find us there. Until the next one.